CSF leak during anterior cervical spine surgery. So the incidence of dural tears in ACDF can be around 0.5%, and when we do a corpectomy, it can range to even 8%. Overall, when we talk about the etiology, it can be as high as 30% when the etiology is OPLL. Now, this is a dreadful complication because of the primary reason that the repair that we may be doing in the lumbar spine or in the dorsal spine is not possible always in cervical spine, and that is because of the limited exposure. The working space is limited and there is a close proximity to the spinal cord. Now, literature has shown that out of 20 incidences, only in 5 cases a primary repair is accessible and possible. Not all the tears are diagnosed intraoperatively. Post-operatively, the patient may come with a leakage from the surgical site with meningitis or with a mass effect. Now, the nationwide database has shown that this complication generally is bad because it overall increases other complications, the hospital stay increases, the hospital cost increases, and even the mortality is on the higher side as compared to the patients who don't have this complication. The leaks can be classified whether it's a dural tear, whether it is a diverticulum, whether it is a fistula or an indeterminate type. The patients most commonly post-operatively, if we don't diagnose this intraoperatively, may report to us with symptoms of meningitis, that is headache, nausea, vomiting, with photophobia, and less commonly with symptoms of numbness or ataxia. Now, this particular study showed that out of all the patients, that is 109 patients who incurred an anterior cervical dural tear, in 90% of the patients using either a repair or a sealing agent, there was no clinical sequelae. In 13 patients, that is 12%, they required a subsequent re-exploration or a treatment for CSF drainage. What are the risk factors? So in this particular study, wherein they researched over around 4,000 surgeries, there was no positive association seen with the operating time or the number of surgical levels. However, positive association was seen with older age, rheumatoid arthritis, OPLL, cervical deformities, bad compression, and in case of corpectomy. In this particular study, which studied 2,000 surgeries, no association was seen with the age or the approach, and the risk factors positively associated were a revision surgery, male gender, corpectomy, and OPLL. Intraoperatively, we generally are able to diagnose when we see a clear fluid leakage from the surgical site, a clear communication with the dura during dissection, air bubbles may be seen at the surgical site. Post-operatively, MRI or CT myelo can be done to confirm, and beta-2 transferrin assay is a specific test for CSF leak. Now, immediately intraoperatively, if we incur a CSF leak, we can manage it using the sealing agents if a primary repair is not possible. Ideal is a primary repair. Now, gelatin sponges, dural substitutes, or even muscle plug or a fibrin glue may be used, but literature also suggests some case reports that these also cause a mass effect over the spinal cord. Post-operatively, how do we manage these patients? So we primarily give them bed rest with a head end elevation, restriction of activities to prevent CSF leakage, placement of drain like lumbar drains, shunts procedure, ventriculostomy in severe cases, and we generally step up the antibiotics. Now, this is a treatment algorithm wherein if ever we incur a dural tear intraoperatively in an anterior cervical spine surgery, we attempt and repair. If the repair is successful, we in hospital monitor the patient and we just keep the head end elevation of 30 degrees. If that is not possible, the primary repair, we definitely go in for a lumbar drain which is kept for 3 days. If that settles down, we observe the patient. If that doesn't settle down, it is surgeon's preference to either continue the lumbar drain for another 3 days or we re-explore. If after re-exploration still the patient is having a persistent leak, we subject the patient to a head CT. If it shows signs of hydrocephalus, a shunting procedure may have to be the only salvage procedure of choice left. This was a meta-analysis of 49 studies wherein bed rest and use of subfacial drain did not show any improved outcome. Better is a direct repair followed by a patch and sealant. Now, augmenting using a suture repair and a sealant did not improve any failure rate. However, augmenting using a patch and a sealant was associated with improvement in the repair outcomes. 13 patients who underwent CSF leak in this particular article, they were recognized intraoperatively. All were treated with muscle grafting, fibrin glue, gel foam, and Duragen. 9 of them were asymptomatic with a repair. 4 of them were symptomatic, out of which 3 required re-exploration. Acetazolamide has not shown any positive relation with respect to controlling the CSF leak. Once we put in the lumbar drain radiologically, even the CSF leak is confirmed and the resolution is something that is well documented. This is a series of case reports and the literature wherein the most common symptom with which the patient reported post-operatively when the leak was not diagnosed intraoperatively was dysphagia and a neck mass. And most commonly, the patient had to undergo a re-exploration, and some of them even reported after 9 months of surgery. What are the post-operative challenges? Meningitis, arachnoiditis, delay in wound healing, infections, deficit, fistula formation, airway compromise, pseudomeningocele, and longer hospital stay. In this particular case report, the patient underwent a re-exploration. They used a sandwich technique wherein 4 layers alternately of fibrin glue and gel foam were placed. The implant was again repositioned, lumbar drain was inserted, and on follow-up at the end of 9 months, patient was completely asymptomatic. What are the preventive strategies? Risk factor evaluation, meticulous dissection, removing bony spikes nicely, avoiding excessive retraction of the spinal cord, paraspinal muscles, tympana to prevent small leak. In revision surgery, begin the dissection from unscarred to scarred area. Now, this was one of the innovative techniques wherein they tried to control the CSF leak using the bone wax. The theory for them was direct suture repair was difficult when they incurred the leak intraoperatively. Lumbar drainage, according to them, will definitely aid, but it will not control the entire CSF leak. Patch and glue method has got a risk of the spinal cord compression. So they used a bone graft to completely occlude the anterior gap between the fusion cage and the graft and the vertebra, and the patient eventually was treated successfully without any need of re-exploration. This is another technique wherein using a 25 gauge needle transforaminally, a 3 ml autologous blood was injected. Patient was kept on bed rest for 1 day, and the patient was asymptomatic, and the patient didn't require any re-exploration. Now, the important thing in this technique, what they did was they inserted the bone, the blood, not just at the site of the leak, but 1 level proximal as well as 1 level distal. The theory was that via the transforaminal area, it will even reach anteriorly from where the leak is actually happening. One of the other practical tips which is not published because I tried to look up for the literature is using an undersized cage and using a compression plate at the site of the leak, which may prevent the leak from being symptomatic, and it may be healed after the bed rest. Thank you.